Hi, welcome back to my channel. Now, this book review video will be a little bit longer, and I know some of my book review videos do tend to run long anyway, but this one particularly because I am going to be reviewing 4 books in this video. I will pop up that graphic for those 4 books, and then I will shift to discussing one book at a time. Now, this is the Lucy Kendall series, okay? Now, there was a prequel called Hear No Lies that I did not read. I started with the first book, The Girl in the Pink Shoes. Now, there's just a couple of things I want to mention about this series, and one of those things is our character, Lucy Kendall, is a retired social worker, now PI, private investigator, who is a vigilante, okay? Now, it's a 4-book series, and we get to see what drives Lucy, what actions she takes, how her life evolves, grows, and even whether or not it changes direction, and how the series was able to come to a satisfying conclusion. The other thing that I wanted to mention is that these books were all released, let's find out, I think 2 years ago or 3 years ago. A long time ago, almost 8 years ago, back in 2014. These books were released in 2014 and 2015. So the first book, now I'm going to segue into a book cover for The Girl in the Pink Shoes. The first book was called All Good Deeds, written again in 2014. It has been re-released by the publisher Bookouture, and I read it as The Girl in the Pink Shoes, and that's the cover that I'm sharing with you right now. Now, as I mentioned, our character, Lucy Kendall, is a woman who has a vendetta. Her vendetta is against child molesters. Now, I will not be graphic in this video at all, nor is the book when it comes to harming the books, the whole series, 1, 2, 3, and 4, nor are the books graphic when it comes to children. However, when it comes to Lucy's actions towards the men that she has a vendetta against, in some cases, if it's murder, there's a bit of, a little bit of intensity with regard to that. So, all that notwithstanding, let's move on. So, in our first book, we see Lucy sitting at a bar, and she sees a man, and I believe these are all written in first person. I'm almost sure they are, and I'm not going to double check because it's been like 2 months since I read them. 2 months, yeah. But anyway, she's sitting and she spots a man, and she has a plan. Now, what Lucy does is once she laser focuses on an individual, the basic plan is, and I'm gonna be straight with you. She's gonna kill him. Yeah. She is, what's the word? She's taken the law into her own hands. Okay? Now, when I started drafting my book reviews for this series, I did put a preamble, or there's another word, there's a better word, but I did put something in the beginning, and it basically states that in no way do I condone murder under any circumstances. However, the way this book is written, it's written from the perspective of a damaged individual who really wants to set things straight and to give closure to those who were harmed by men who were basically harming children. And her intent is, if the court system failed them, then she was going to be the vigilante to bring justice to those who deserved it. In her case, justice was truly served cold because it means the end of their life. So she starts with her next victim in mind. Around the time that the book, The Girl in the Pink Shoes, starts, she meets someone. And he says to her, now I'm going by what's up here locked in my brain from a couple of months ago when I read these 4 books. Well, he comes to her and he says, I know what you're all about. I know what you're all about. I know what you're doing. She says, no. I used to be a child protective services social worker, but now I'm a PI. I'm just, looking for people. I'm doing my thing. But no, because currently she hears that there's a young girl named Kaylee, who's gone missing. And her first intent is to find Kaylee safe, or at least find Kaylee and return her to her parents. However, because a lot of men that take little girls harm them in the way that we know, if she doesn't find Kaylee alive and she can find out who took Kaylee, the girl in the pink shoes in the case of this first book, then she will do what she feels that she has to do. So if there are trigger warnings for this Lucy Kendall series by Stacy Green, written back in 2014 and 2015, but published by Bookouture on January 30th, like a week ago or a few days ago, this first-person point of view does deal with some heavy topics, and we're going to talk about what they are. It's pedophilia, molestation, child abuse, and even suicide. Okay? Now, we want to know, or you might want to know, should you want to go any further, why Lucy has become a vigilante. Well, when she was a young girl, I think 12 or 13, her sister took her life. That is where the trigger warning for suicide would come in. She is bringing justice to other little girls who could possibly, or women, young women, be driven to that action based on that situation. In the case of her sister, she was harmed by one of her mother's boyfriends when they were children. Okay? Now, I listened to the first book, The Girl in the Pink Shoes, as an audiobook, but then I read the other 3 as ebooks. Okay? Now, as I listened to these books, I started off thinking, I've got to contact the publicist. I'm not reading these. I didn't want to read them for 2 reasons. The main reason I didn't want to read them is because of triggers. Okay? Triggers. I've already named those triggers and I'm not going to repeat them. I felt like I could possibly be triggered to the point where it could really affect my mental health. So what am I saying? I am saying that I am a product of an abusive childhood that has left me with mental illnesses, which include PTSD. So that's the first reason that I thought I might not be able to finish this book. But there's a second reason. The second reason is the fact that she's a vigilante and there's murder involved in these books for the men that she goes after. So I talked to a friend of mine who is another book reviewer just like I am. She's not reading this series, but she is the perfect person to bounce ideas off of when I deal with sensitive issues that come up in books that I might have to kind of rethink. I needed to bounce my feelings about those 2 issues, being triggered and the fact that it's vigilantism. So she said, well, here, why don't you think about this? And she gave me some ideas. So she gave me some ideas. And so I said, okay, it's an audiobook. It's 9 hours. At 2 speed, I should be done in 4.5 hours. Let's see how it goes. Now, like I said earlier, There's no graphic content in book 1, 2, 3, or 4. No graphic content. So that lowered the trigger level for me. It lowered it significantly, even. Now, granted, in each of the 4 books, there are cases going on that Lucy is investigating that do involve the taking of children. But again, there was no graphic nature in any of the books, and I did not feel triggered as I thought I could possibly be. So I was safe on that regard. And then the morality part came in. How do I feel as a Christian to read a book where there's murder, and murder is a willful act that takes another person's life? Simply put, that's not Webster's definition, but that's basically what it is. Well, I kept on reading anyway. And I'm like, I get Lucy. I started to get Lucy. Of course, I did think about Dexter. I've never seen the show, but the previews used to come on, and I know what he's all about. Never ever seen a single episode, never will, but I couldn't help but think about Dexter. And then I thought about, wait a minute, I've never read a book like this before. So I kept on reading, or should I say kept on listening, and I came off thinking definitely 5 stars. 5 stars. Okay. Now, remember that I said Lucy met somebody when she was at the bar that night that said, I know what you're all about. Okay? Now, his name is Chris, and he is involved in the in the stories as they're developed. Okay? Knowing that this character's name is Chris is important should you want to read the series. And I wanted to share that with you, but I won't tell you what Chris is all about. But we're just going to stop there and talking about Chris. Now, Chris isn't the only significant character in this book. There's a man named Justin, okay? And then there's a man who gets released from prison, and it looks like he may have indeed been wrongly accused. The thing is, and I believe this is Justin, I could be wrong about the name, but she's concerned that she made a mistake in pointing the finger at him when she was with the Child Protective Services. So that's another avenue the book takes. And because the book was taking these different avenues and bringing these different characters, beyond Lucy, you had Chris, you had Justin, and you had a couple of other people, it became a compelling read for me. So I kept on reading, and I finished it, and like I said, I gave it 5 stars. So I'm not going to even tell you any of the twists and turns or anything like that, because already it's 13 minutes into the video, and I've only touched on the first book. So I'd like to just move right into the second book. And the second book was called, bringing it up, was called Little Lost Souls, which was originally released in December of 2014, and it was called See Them Run. So you go from The Girl in the Pink Shoes to Little Lost Souls. And all 4 of these books by Stacy Green were released on the same day. They were concurrently released on January 30th. Now, it's later. Lucy still has this goal to protect and to save any children that are lost or taken, even if this means that she herself is in the line of fire. What is more is there's a chief of police, and he's another character. And you go into, as you read these books, you are going to start meeting different characters, and they all have very good meaning in this book. Now, this police officer, I won't say male or female, I'm just going to leave it at that, but this police officer knows something is not right about Lucy, okay? something is not right about Lucy, but they can't quite pin anything on her because she's a very smart lady. Okay, now I remember talking to Fashawn, and she had pretty much convinced me, go ahead and just give it a shot. So I did. I gave The Girl in the Pink Shoes a shot, gave it 5 stars, and started on the second book, which, as I mentioned, I think I said All the Lonely Girls, or Little Lost Souls. I think All the Lonely Girls is book 4. So it's Little Lost Souls. I remember reading this book because only book 1 came to me as an audiobook, and the other 3 came to me as electronic galleys, electronic advanced copies. 3% in, and Lucy did it again. And I'm like, oh my goodness, she's not going to stop. Okay. I read this book. Simply put, another 5-star read. You can't get past the fact that Stacy Green is an excellent writer who wrote an excellent series with an excellent protagonist and made it so compelling that even though she was a vigilante and a one-woman team to bring justice to those who were harmed by brutal men, she wasn't just going to identify these men. She was going to bring them to an end. I'm sorry, jail wasn't good enough for them. Okay, so this kept putting me into this moral dilemma. Should I keep reading this? Am I heralding vigilantism? Am I heralding murder? Am I violating my Christian personality and responsibilities? But no. She thought she was the moral authority in this case of bringing justice to those who were harmed, but I didn't feel that I had any right to judge. So I kept on reading. Now, don't forget Chris. Remember I said she met Chris? Chris met her in the bar that time. I know what you're all about. So, whatever happens with Chris? What happens as the books progress? Who is Chris even? Okay? Now, when she finds out that there's child trafficking going on in this second book, then she really buckles down in her endeavor to find justice. Excellent, excellent read. Oh my word, I cannot even tell you how quickly I read this second book in the series. And even though I had this as an ebook instead of an audiobook, I read Little Lost Souls quicker than I listened to The Girl in the Pink Shoes because it was that good. Okay? Then we move on to book 3. Book 3 was The Girl in the Cabin. It was released as Gone to Die in June of 2015. Now re-released as The Girl in the Cabin, and I'm going to bring that book cover up for you. And by now, I'm like, okay, Lucy, I get you, girl. You're not triggering me. You're not creating any more intense night terrors than I already have. You're not making me feel like a hypocrite to my faith. I get you, girl. Okay, let's see what you're going to give us in book 3. Now, what is Lucy going to do when more and more of her friends start to know that there's just something more to meet the eye than Lucy simply being a PI? Okay? And then when we have Chris's mother, remember I said Chris? I think this is now the 4th time I've mentioned Chris. We learn more about his mother in book 3. His mother's name is Mary, and there's something about Mary. Okay? Now, Chris, up until now, has had one goal, not so much to expose Lucy as you might have thought in book 1, but his goal was to find his mother, Mary. Let's talk about Mary. Let's talk about Chris for this matter. Now, I mentioned Chris about 10 minutes ago in this video, but I waited until his story comes to a bigger picture in book 3. Chris witnessed a gruesome act committed by his mother when he was a small boy. Chris is now a paramedic, but he's also somebody who has been watching Lucy. And because he's been watching Lucy and he understands her reasoning for her vendetta, he wants to bring her into what he really wants is to find Mary, his mother, and to bring justice to Mary. Wow, has this series flipped? Okay. Yes, Lucy still has her goals. Chris has wormed his way into Lucy's life and has affected what Lucy's doing in her attempts to find justice. But now Chris is looking for Mary. But wait a minute, Chris goes missing. So now, what is Lucy doing? She wants to find Chris, and she's hoping that he hasn't been caught by his own mother, Mary. Well, when you read book 3, you find out that Mary actually wants to meet with Lucy. Yes, she's going to put herself in the line of fire of a vicious killer. That's what book 3 is about. Yes, Stacy Green is brilliant. Absolutely, unreservedly brilliant. Okay? That's all I'm going to tell you about book 3. Then we move to the last book in the series, which concludes the series. And that book is The Lonely Girls, which was released in, when was this released? In November of 2015. But again, we're reading the newer release versions that were released January 30th, 2023. And in The Lonely Girls, we have Lucy still with this vendetta, but she has a chance to change what happens in the direction of her life. What happens in this one is, and let me tell you something that I haven't told you yet. While Lucy is hitting the, pounding the pavement trying to find these bad guys, she's aided by a girl named Kelly, who is a computer whiz. She can break into any computer system, any database that she wants, and she has been working with Lucy. So she knows all of Lucy's secrets. Well, guess what? Kelly goes missing. So now Lucy is desperate to find Kelly. Okay? Now, Kelly, the way Lucy met Kelly, I won't tell you, because even though you meet Kelly in book 1, you don't find out almost until book 3 or 4 the connection that Lucy had in how she met Kelly. So I won't tell you that. But because of Kelly's past, she was agoraphobic. And it started off where Kelly goes missing, and now Lucy is trying to find Kelly and to bring her back safely. Now, she can't do this all on her own. She's got to ask for help. And now there's been a cop all along from the first book who knows what Lucy's all about. There's even an FBI agent that knows what Lucy's all about. But for right now, we want to find Kelly. Okay? Sad to say that The Lonely Girls is the end of the series. Did it wrap up well? Yes, it did. Yes, it did. What stories wrapped up in The Lonely Girls by Stacy Green? What happened to Chris? What happened to his mother Mary? Where Lucy ended up? Was Kelly found safely? And where Lucy goes, I think I kind of already said that, but where Lucy goes from here. Excellent, 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 excellent books. Guess what? All 4 of those books got 5 stars each. Yes, they did. Am I glad I read this book based on a vigilante killer? Yes, I am. Did this book trigger my PTSD? No, it did not. Do I recommend these books to you? You bet your bottom dollar I do. You bet your bottom dollar I do. Oh, yes. Yes. You will not be disappointed. And I want to just see if I just want to see. I think these are on Kindle Unlimited, but I'm not 100% sure, and I just want to check. Yes, you can get all 4 of these books on Kindle Unlimited. I do know that you can get the first book as an audiobook, so my bet is that eventually all 4 books will be available on audiobooks. I know this was a long video, but it had to be because I had to wax poetic about this beautiful Lucy Kendall series by Stacy Green. I love Stacy Green. I have read a number of her books. We're going to find out how many before I even read this Lucy Kendall series. Anytime, anytime. Sometimes Goodreads takes a while to load, but if you use Goodreads and you go to my books and you search in your book section, you can quickly see what books you have read by name or by author or by title. So if I look up Stacy Green, it looks like I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 books by Stacy Green. Yeah, I love Stacy Green. That's it. Thank you for watching. See you next time. Bye-bye.